Hey, George. I
Oh,
appreciate you joining me today. You're actually quite famous in my house because you provided something that my son absolutely loves. Now, you've been in the industry over 25 years, but
yeah.
you currently work for PakTech, and you were kind enough to send me some of PakTech's newest children's toys, which I have utilized to teach my son Max his ABCs and his one, two, threes. So I really
Love
want to
it.
thank you again. But that's not why you're here today because you're making kids toys. Currently, you are at PakTech. What is PakTech for anyone who doesn't know? We kind of love to knock that out before we dive back into how you got there.
Sure. Well, PakTech is a Eugene-based, family-owned multi-pack handle and can carrier handle company, molded plastic right here in Eugene, 100% recyclable. We do the can handles for craft beer, the beer industry, as well as any multi-pack that if you're wandering the aisles of Costco, if it's clipped together with two bottles or two containers, that's PakTech. And international, but myself, I've been with them 2 months and having a great time. It's a really great company.
And it's quite a change of pace for you, I imagine, going into the consumer packaged goods market because you spent 25 years essentially on the sales side.
Yeah, it is different, especially from the beer side of things, from the relationships with the distributors and can to shelf type. We're on the back end of working with consumer food companies, solving their solutions for merchandising and presenting their products versus the back end where in beer it was you're the last point of entry. It's been
No, absolutely.
interesting.
Absolutely. I'm excited to learn more about, the value in that and, kind of a little bit what you've done the past 25 years. So you've worked for some of the largest breweries in the world. I mean, you are based in Portland, Oregon, which is obviously, a great hub for craft beer, but you've ended your career before going to PakTech at Oakshire Brewing in Eugene. And you have tons of stories to tell. And that's one of the reasons we're here today. But
If I
first,
can
I
remember
really
them.
want to start, how in the world did you get into the craft beer industry? When you were growing up, is this an industry? I mean, obviously, that kid running around the playground in Oregon, I can't imagine you wanted to go into craft beer when you were, 12, 13 years old. Like, what did you think you were going to do with your life, George?
Oh boy. Well, I grew up in Portland and we were born in LA. So we were a Coors family to begin with. When we moved here, you couldn't get Coors, but that's another story. I was in the grocery business. I started working at Albertsons in high school at 14 years old, sorting bottles, and worked my way up through the ranks as I started Portland State. And I ran the outer cold box departments my last 2 years while I was deciding, am I going to finish my degree or go to store director training? And I really got infatuated with working with the beer distributors. Learning about how they work, how they go to market. Coors at the time, and still is one of the fastest and biggest brands in the state domestically. I really got to build relationships with the beer distributors. And then in 1994, we call it the Great Grocery Strike of '94. I had to decide, was I going to work 80 hours a week? I left Albertsons and was able to get on at Mount Hood Beverage, now Columbia Distributing, as a merchandiser. And you had to prove your work. Started as a merchandiser and worked up through sales, and over time earned a spot on a route, and then was recruited by Miller Brewing Company from a woman I worked with at Oregon Ales, which was Oregon Original Ales, Oregon IPA, which was a subsidiary at the time of Boston Beer, believe it or not. And I had the privilege of representing brands like Bridgeport. And really, consumers at the time are like, what is this hoppy? Why am I drinking? What's this bitter stuff we're drinking? It was a lot of fun. But the craft at the time to me was Henry Weinhardt's. A lot of Henry
So when you
Weinhardt's.
were working at Albertsons, as just a teenager, and you were helping stock the shelf, playing with all those bottles, what are some of the brands that stood out to you even then?
Oh man, as far Rogue was one for sure, and at the time was when Sierra Nevada came on. When Sierra Nevada came into the store and it started distribution, that's when my ears perked up that there's a change coming in the industry. The Bud Miller and Coors section is going to get a lot smaller.
Did you even feel that change coming even as a teenager?
I think we did. I did in the Portland area. Going to school. Driving by the Weinhardt's Brewery. I mean, it was a beer centric city to begin with, and seeing the beginning of it with the brands like Norwester and Widmer. And seeing my parents dabble into these new beers, it was intriguing.
Now, to go back to the grocery store again, I've had quite a few conversations with people, just talking about their careers, reflecting on their lives, what got them into craft beer. And there's a weird recurring theme of people starting their employment history in a grocery store. And my question for you is, what did you learn from the grocery store that proved to be valuable, once you got further into the craft beer industry? And a follow-up, it's kind of obvious how it led you into craft beer, but what made you ready to take those steps?
I believe just the understanding of merchandising and consumers' needs, understanding how items are sold and what the consumers are looking for. I mean, there's definitely a training process of understanding the cold box. And a lot of the 80% of the business probably at the time was all done in the off-premise, understanding merchandising and how products are received in the back door. That was a trait when you go into work for a distributor. You understood the process of how beer comes in the back door to the floor and out the door.
Now, when you ended up in college, what was your major?
I was a lost soul. General studies business.
Well, a quality business degree is always a valuable one. Did you end up finishing school, or you got sucked away into the distribution world?
I got sucked away into the distribution. It was a fast track, and it was a lot of fun, and I don't regret a day of it.
Now, in that point in time, were you in Portland, or where were you studying, and then where did you end up working first?
I was in Portland, so I was living in Portland, going to school at Portland State, and working at the local Albertsons, just a couple miles from the university. Living with my roommate Kevin and drinking a lot of Henry Weinhardt's. And then Mount Hood Beverage is based right in downtown Portland, so I joined them, and the rest is kind of history. But it really truly was. What I can tell you about that grocery experience is when I got called up to the plate to cover vacation routes. It just so happened I was out in a territory where the vice president and the sales manager were out touring stores in other markets, and they had driven through town and followed up on a couple stores that I had merchandise, and they were like, okay, this guy knows how to merchandise. He knows to put point of sale on. He can actually write legibly and make numbers, because we didn't have graphic machines back then. Everything, you carried a big suitcase with your pens and your signage. Made an impression, and got it within the next few months. I had my own route, and then was promoted to the key account on-premise manager, responsible for the top Coors accounts in the market.
Was it something so simple as your organization that truly got you seen?
I believe it definitely was that, but my ability my relationships and understanding grocery and retail sales, and being able to have those conversations with, why you need to bring this, whether it's distribution or building displays. Definitely the experience in the grocery business definitely helped, and being personable. It's a relationship business.
It is a relationship business. I think you're the third call today where that's been the key line that we've had to say. And it truly is. As the craft beer industry grows, you've been involved in craft since some of the earlier days. And, back then, some mediocre brands were able to survive as they broke into the segment. But I think now, at least the past 10 years, the importance of having a quality beverage is an absolute must. If you're not making a high quality beer, then you're not going to last too long. But, understanding how to build and grow the business and form those relationships is absolutely, necessary. Is that something you've always felt as necessary, or do you believe it's kind of grown in importance over the past couple of decades?
Oh, wow. It used to be everything was about relationships. My experience in the early days was, you sold marketing, you sold boxes. You sold a summer program. You really never talked about the beer per se, but it's all about the quality. And if you have quality relationships and you can speak about the quality of your product, that's where the rubber meets the road now. I really feel everything's about quality. You can talk about it, but boy, you better really be able to show it.
So in your first few years working for Mount Hood Beverage, what are some of the brands you represented in the market?
Uh, Brands, Bridgeport, one of the originals in Portland, Saxer Brewing Company, Lemon Lager, brewery out of Lake Oswego, Oregon Original Ales. Rogue was one of the big ones at the time before, Sierra Nevada as well, but in Oregon was definitely Rogue. Those guys were just awesome, especially for new sales reps. Used to bring us out to Newport. Had a lot of fun with Jack Joyce back in the day and Jim Klein, taking you out on scavenger hunts to learn more about being a rogue. If you're going to be a rogue, you better be prepared to rogue. And rogue one time meant riding around a taxi with Jack Joyce and Jim Klein and having Jägermeister shots at every bar in Newport.
So let's dive into that for a minute, though. In those early days of craft, obviously you are already a beer guy. And first off, when did you, I mean, growing up in Portland, I'm sure it's fairly easy to become a craft beer drinker, but did you have that moment where you realized that you felt a connection to the industry? Is there that certain beer, that kind of sucked you in a little bit more than others?
The time when I was working at Albertsons and we enjoyed drinking Henry Weinhardt's because of the flavor and the ingredients, and really had that entry level craft. But it was when I joined Mountain Hood Beverage and started to go on Fridays to Bridgeport, that's when the wheels started turning for me. And you can never turn down a Sierra Nevada celebration at Christmas time either.
Oh no, it's always a delicious one. But so you are already a craft beer drinker, but for the rest of the market, how are you helping educate others about the value of the brands you're representing?
Really working close, the relationships not only with the consumers and the retailers, is really working close with the brewery reps. If you didn't understand their brand and their value proposition, because we represented 30 different breweries, each one has a different value proposition. Really partnering with them. It's really can't put my finger on the pulse of your question, but I really felt that my point of difference was really taking the time to work with my brewery reps and not turning them away when they're saying, "Hey, can I come join you for lunch?" They want to help, and that really helped me understand their goals and objectives and where they fit within the portfolio I was representing. They're an asset.
And I guess my follow-up question to that would be, when you were helping set up the displays at all the retailers, what was making these new craft beer displays stand out to the consumer?
The right spot on the right place on the floor. It's really just popping them. Using all the merchandising tools. Breweries, when I started, didn't have point of sale budgets and marketing budgets, so we had to get creative. Walking through the store and finding, whether it's a summertime barbecue grill or whatever was in the store that I can use of theirs, and making an impact when folks walked in, like, "Oh, look, it's Sierra Nevada or Bridgeport. Oh, next to a barbecue. It's summertime. Better go down the beer aisle and buy a 6-pack." We really had to get scrappy because there wasn't a big marketing budgets with craft breweries back in those days.
Were there any unique displays you remember that just really stood out to you? I mean, obviously, the summertime cookout vibe's great, but is there anything you did that was above and beyond that you were proud of?
The Oregon Ales, Oregon Trails displays that we executed, and that was just a brainchild of working with the rep at the time of, how do we get more space on the floor and our share. We did Oregon Trails, Oregon Ales, Oregon Trails on the floor, and it was just displays of beautiful hop vines. You just draw attraction to the department.
That sounds fun. So in those days, you were with the Miller distributor. How long did you first stick around at that position?
Actually, it was at the Coors distributor.
Oh, apologies.
They're a Miller Coors distributor now. I was there for about 7 years. And after 7 years, I got in touch with a woman that was the rep for Oregon Ales, and she is now at Miller Brewing Company. She recruited me, and I was nervous. I didn't know what a brewery rep did at a big brewery. I was good at what I was doing at the distributor, managing the on-premise. I think me and my team and the distributor pushed some buttons because Coors Light was the #1 beer on tap, and Miller Brewing Company tapped me to run their on-premise in Portland, and I joined Miller Brewing Company with my dream job, always wanting to be at Coors.
That's interesting. And what was it like working there?
At Miller Brewing Company?
Yeah.
Let's just say the first day of training when in Milwaukee, you had to wear black suits. I didn't know they were owned by Philip Morris. So you show up to Milwaukee and it's if you got cigarettes, you're cool. It was really interesting. It was definitely eye-opening. I knew I was working for a corporation. It was very structured, but very much a brewery at heart, especially in Milwaukee.
And had you been to Milwaukee prior to that first visit?
I had never been to Milwaukee.
Because it seems like most of your career, you've just been lucky enough to stay in Oregon. So did you look forward to these, I'm not going to call them vacations, but getaways to other locations? Or, how did you feel about the travel that's associated with a lot of sales positions?
Well, at the time, I was in my 20s. So to me, it was exciting to go to Milwaukee, to go to the national sales conferences in Las Vegas, New Orleans, Nashville. It was exciting. I looked forward to them because it was an opportunity to meet other distributors, other coworkers from around the country. In my later years, it definitely was like, okay, that was fun back then.
And I imagine you probably keep the travel more so for pleasure than work these days.
Definitely. Yep. Without a doubt. Yeah. I've seen my share of road time.
Oh, no, I know what that's like. Now, I'm going to hold you to something you mentioned in an email to me. You said that if you wrote a book about your life, it would be a New York Times bestseller. That's an exact quote from an email chain you and I had, within the past month. So with regard to that, I imagine there's quite a few stories from your years working at Miller and Coors. And I know you briefly had mentioned that at your first day at Coors, you were drinking Banquet on the beach.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. What's that memory?
That memory, it's amazing. Again, when I transitioned from Miller Brewing Company, I got recruited onto Coors Brewing Company. I got my dream job. The gentleman that was the brewery rep when I was at the distributor retired, and it was a dream job because then I was working back with my general manager that hired me at Mount Hood Beverage. So I got to go experience Coors Brewing Company with him and the Mount Hood Beverage team in Miami. I was like, okay, so the first day we just hang out on the beach and introduce ourselves to the Coors family. It was exhilarating. And then we got to that evening where they had us funneled into what was like a Coors Light bottle on its side. So you walk in the tube and the frost is going off, and we're standing at the end of the bottle, and my general manager, or now distributor vice president, like, just stand here. Something exciting is going to happen. And I'm like, okay, this is my first day. The stage drops and Tom Petty standing like from me to my desk. Just those experiences, it was work. Again, it's work, but it was just, this is my first day on the job and I'm standing in front of Tom Petty and I got to meet Pete Coors. It was pretty cool.
So you've got me a little jealous right now. I am a very big Tom Petty fan. So were you treated to like an intimate concert, or were you shooting some sort of video? Why was Tom Petty there?
He was there, brought in for the distributor meeting. Yeah, but he was there as the entertainment gig for the opening of the National Sales Conference, which was my first day on the job.
Concert for you all at that conference?
Yeah, it was cool. And it's funny we're talking about Tom Petty because my fiance and I were driving back from our weekend trip, and we kept Tom Petty songs were playing throughout the day. So I think that was a reminder for me to bring this up today.
No, I think it's really important because when you look back at Tom Petty's career, he's put out a lot of really consistent hits. When you put on his greatest hits, for example, I remember when I was just growing up and a friend threw it in the car CD player back then, everybody knew Tom Petty. But when you have his greatest hits CD on, every song is something you remember that you didn't know you even knew.
Oh, exactly. Well said. Yeah.
I think he's one of those people you can connect with. Like Tom Petty, rest his soul. If you met him in a bar, it would be a good time.
Totally. Without a doubt. Yeah, just the experiences, Andrew. I mean, the opportunities that allowed me to work with my distributors and thank them for the business through, NASCAR events. I know there's probably not a lot of Dallas Cowboys fans listening, but I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, and going to the opening of Texas Stadium and meeting Jerry Jones, I thought was cool.
Well, from my background, actually, I spent about 20 years running a food service, and I had the opportunity to work small and large events all over the place. And it's fascinating when you're going to these NFL-sized stadiums and looking logistically at how things work. When you would come in as a beer guy, did you look at it from that angle? You're like, man, we have Miller, Coors at 15 different locations plus around this place. Did you analyze things from that perspective?
Oh, it would be overwhelming to add. Thank gosh we had a huge marketing and a sports and events department, but it's pretty amazing because I was also at the grand opening, which was pretty exciting. Was the opening of Miller Park where the Brewers play. But to your question, of course, the beer guy inside me, just like I still do, and I'm trying to break the habit. I walk into a grocery store, I find myself on the beer aisle. I'll catch up with you in a bit. I got to check space. But doing that in a park like Texas Stadium, yeah, it's just Miller Lite.
Now, question for you: Coors Banquet, it has a special spot in a lot of craft beer drinkers' hearts, especially brewers. It's one of the beers, even though it's big beer, it's something a lot of people enjoy. Why do you think that's so?
It's original. I mean, it is just a great lager beer that is true. It's been tried and true since its inception, and it's just got great mystique. The Coors mystique. Personally, it's just a great. If it wasn't PBR, I'd be drinking Coors. I just think that's when you're not drinking craft. That's what you're enjoying.
And at what point in your career did you end up at Pabst?
I ended up at Pabst in 2013, just after it was about a year after the merger of Miller Coors. There was a lot of restructuring, and at the time, if you were selected, is a way to put it, you were offered a job, or you were offered a departure. My role was offered up as Los Angeles, and I love my family and no desire to leave Oregon. And the question came up, well, would you move back to Eugene? And so I ended up in Eugene. There was some more restructuring. And at the time, I was like, I knew Eugene was going to be my home. I'm settled here. And there was another brand at the time in Oregon that was growing very fast in the Portland market, especially. Pabst was on a tear, and I worked with a gentleman in my career at the distributor that was running the Northwest, and he's like, "Hey, we made some magic when we were at Coors. At the distributor, you want to give it a shot with Pabst?" And yeah, it was a great time, new challenge.
No, very looking back, say that one more time.
Very entrepreneurial. The market was your market. You wrote the playbook.
That's interesting because when you look at these large companies, you think more corporate structure, but you just mentioned entrepreneurial. Why was it that way? I mean, did you feel like your territory was your territory and you could make the rules, or what type of control did they give you that mindset?
The best way to describe it is that we really worked close with our distributors in the market. The distributor and the brewery wrote the business plan for the market. How dollars were going to be invested, how they're going to grow the brand. I mean, the distributors know the market, they know the consumers, especially as craft at the time was already established. Craft drinkers, when they weren't drinking craft, they were drinking Pabst. There was just a scene here in Portland, and the distributor rode the wave, and the partnership of that business plan was not dictated by corporate. It was true collaboration with the distributor.
And at this point, you've been in craft beer, about 15 years when you joined Pabst?
Yes.
And had you already started to notice it and changes, anything dramatic that you felt had changed over your career at this point in time? I mean,
Well, it was obvious looking at the cold boxes in the grocery stores in the channels of trade. Domestic space was shrinking and craft was growing. There were more players in the market trying to rise to the top. With Freem, Crux, so many other awesome breweries that are gobbling for shelf space, and consumers were flocking to craft.
and how did this make you feel being with Pabst at the time?
Very comfortable, because it was the brand that when you weren't drinking, just like I said about Coors, it was the brand that was perceived or enjoyed by a lot of brewers at breweries. It was their go-to beer when they weren't drinking their beer.
So is that something you actively marketed to?
I wouldn't say we marketed to, but we knew it was there, and we glad to I sent many of cases to different breweries, especially here in Eugene. There's a couple big ones here that enjoyed it when I came by to visit and brought some Pabst, because then I'd get to leave with some of their beer.
Sure. I mean, we all can't drink double IPAs all day.
No.
So it's nice to definitely have that lawnmower beer or something you can just throw in your repertoire. Exactly. It's absolutely fantastic. Speaking of which, what's your go-to when you're just cutting the grass these days? Are you going back to your Coors days, your Miller days, your days of PBR? Did any portion of your career have that ultimate influence to make it that go-to in your life?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's Coors. It's Coors. It was Coors this weekend, but it was also a lot of Rogue, Bat Squatch, hazy IPA. After working at Oakshire, my definite go-to is a good hazy IPA. Dan Russo at Oakshire just kills it.
And Dan is actually the reason you and I did. You connect
right.
me to Dan, or Dan connect me to you. I know
you and I.
One of you shared the article that talks about Dan's strategies for smoothie sour beers, and I was immediately intrigued by that article, because the only connection I had to Oakshire Brewing at that point in time, I've had a lot of conversations with Sam Holloway, who's on your board of directors and founder of Crafting a Strategy. And Sam is one of the smartest people I know in the craft beer industry. He takes everything from an academic perspective, which, I like data. I become a huge data nerd, but when Sam starts talking about things, it goes next level. And his analysis is fantastic. So I knew that if a brewery he was affiliated with was taking a dive into smoothie sours, it would be a very academic approach. And when I read Dan's article, I wasn't let down. I mean, there was so much thought put into that. Did you have much role in the decision to go smoothie sours when you were at Oakshire?
No. I mean, Dan had full creativity. I was the vehicle to execute and distribute and sell. 2021 or 2020, that theme from the bottom was at the time going to be a one-time release. It was going to be part of the pilot series, and it exceeded anyone's expectations. And the team is like, "You got something here, Dan." And now it's, to this day, they just released 2 new ones yesterday, and I'm guaranteed they probably sold out for this Saturday's drop. But full creativity. Dan is just amazing, and I'm glad you were able to connect with him, because that's where the rubber meets the road with that man.
No, Dan's fantastic. He gave a great presentation on his approach at the recent conference, so I appreciate that connection. But looking deeper into this, I mean, you had to take these brands and help take them to market. And a smoothie sour is a little bit different than a banquet beer. So how did your approach change when representing someone like Oakshire with such a diverse product line versus, your early days, pushing more things like Miller, Coors, Pabst? Like, how did your approach and philosophy change?
Well, just to clarify, Andrew, I mean, that's really what 2020 did, was that direct-to-consumer outlet. So while we all celebrated as a company in Dan's awesome beer, that was a tap room only release that was managed through the tap room director and Dan. So man, I probably have to go to about 6 weeks worth of schooling to learn about that beer to be able to sell it to distributors the way Dan explains it. But that was all done in-house.
Well, over your career, though, I mean, tastes have changed quite a bit, and
Sure.
there are some styles, whether at Oakshire or elsewhere in your career, that you didn't probably expect. Are there any trends that you witnessed over your years in craft beer that you were surprised to see, whether good, bad, failures, or successes? Anything unique that kind of caught you off guard?
Well, I would definitely say the timing of double IPAs. One, for example, the 22-ounce double IPAs that, for some reason to this day, still sell like crazy. One that I'm surprised that went away was fruited IPAs, like Thomas Kemper, the Weizenberries of the world. That was one of my favorite beers at the time. But things come back around, and we're starting to see those again. It's very circular, I guess, in some ways, but nothing's really surprised me. I'm just seeing that the industry is still strong. There's still new contenders, and there's a lot of excitement for new and upcoming flavors. I'm excited to see what the next style is going to be.
Do you have any predictions?
I'd have to get back to you on that one. I've been 60 days focused on getting up to speed on this new endeavor, which I'm having a blast at. I need to get out to the beer sign and see what's happening, see what people are talking about.
No, we'll get to more in your PakTech career right now and what you're doing now. But, kind of looking back, and when you were working for, I guess Pabst was your last stop before Oakshire, what made you leave Pabst and want to move to a smaller brewery?
It was the time. I was committed to staying in Eugene. I didn't want to move, and they had mentioned a couple times that we'd love to see you down in LA or back in Portland, which I appreciated. But there was an opportunity within the industry here. So it just so happened that one of my coworkers that had left Pabst during a reorg was the sales director at Oakshire. And he gave me a heads up that he was looking at a role at Deschutes. It wasn't a handoff, but I had reached out to Jeff Althouse at Oakshire, and we courted for 6 weeks, met Dan, had beers at the public house, and just really got to know each other and really understand what they were looking for in a sales director, but also understand Oakshire. And it was an aha moment for me that all my years in the industry, there was so much more to learn about beer, because beer at the distributor level or at one of the major breweries, it's about selling. It's selling the boxes. And the 3 years at Oakshire, I truly learned more about beer in those 3 years than the whole time of my career. I mean, I got to mash in, I got to rake out, I work on the canning line. It was truly got to be entrenched in the brew house especially last year, because it was all hands on deck.
That's very interesting that you've learned more about beer in 3 years than you did your entire career prior. Are there any specific takeaways or facts that you learned that were more mind-blowing or impressive than others that you were glad to have learned?
I can just sum it up. Beer is a science. Mad scientists that work on those brew tacks, but no, great beer takes time. Great beer takes great people, and great beer is something that I really feel that everyone is working for. But the one thing that blew me away is just the sheer juggling of in-tank time and managing your tank space. You've got a lot of beers to release, and you only got so much tank space, especially when you have a core lineup. Just understanding the fundamentals. It was really, really fun to watch. And the barrel aging was totally new to me. The barrel aging program at Oakshire was incredible to watch.
And you were still on the sales side, but being on the sales side for the larger brands, companies that you worked, you weren't necessarily in the same facility as a brew house. And you would go visit Milwaukee, I'm sure you'd go to one of the motherships, but you weren't having your home base in the same location.
No, you went to the corporate office, 6 stories on High Street.
Did you feel the same connection with the liquid as you did for your years working with the Miller Coors, Pabst, than when you came to Oakshire? I mean, I know you said you learned a lot more at Oakshire, but how did it increase your connection with the brand?
Oh, without a doubt, the connection. That showing up at I worked from home my whole career until I started at Oakshire, and you can work from home. It's like, no, I want an office here, and just that daily routine of talking to the brewing team and being in touch from the packaging line from the time our distributors picked up. It was truly, that was impressive. I enjoyed that part. It was definitely a bit stronger connection.
It's interesting that you mentioned you've worked from home essentially your entire career, because everybody's worked from home a high portion of the past year and a half, which I absolutely love working from home. If you can't hear my baby downstairs screaming right now. But one thing about working from home pre-pandemic, I imagine it was a little bit harder to build relationships because you don't have that rapport of working in an office next to someone. You don't have the brew house 20 feet away where you can go talk to people. How did you continue to build relationships and educate yourself and stay on top of, all the latest trends? Were you connecting with other people at the brewing company in other ways outside of, just going to once a year conferences, or how were you kind of, furthering yourself through conversation?
Yeah, we were set up as districts. So field sales managers, the West Coast, one per state per se. And then I'd have 3 direct reports out in the field. A lot of that was getting out of the office and spending time with your distributors, getting out with retail, seeing the market and how brands are performing. So a lot of time outside of the office, but doing the admin work from home, and just staying connected with the distributors. That I say that now because I am working in an office and I'm loving it.
I think we're all craving a little human interaction, and I get mine a lot through the screen these days. So I appreciate you hanging out. But let's talk a little bit about the transition from Pabst to Oakshire. We've talked a lot about your education curve, but it's a much smaller company. What did you learn working for a small company that you hadn't expected you would learn from working for one of the bigger players in the industry? Were there any takeaways besides the educational component? What about just like the organizational flow and just general interactions that you appreciated?
It's definitely a team effort. There's, working for the bigger breweries, you had a marketing department behind you, you had an accounting department beside you, you had shipping and logistics. At a small brewery, everyone's got a piece, and everyone's piece fits the puzzle, but we all supported each other in whatever endeavor it was. And just open line of communication. Communication is everything. And it's truly a team. It was a family. There's no one has their own agenda or objective. And it was kind of like, well, what's behind the door today? It might be a surprise. Can you handle it? Or did you need someone to help you? The teamwork entity was the most important, and be able to just raise a hand and say you needed help, or how can I help you today? There's times I'd be sitting in the office, talking to a distributor, and it's like, hey, you need me to, jump on the canning line for a minute and stack cases. So it's everyone had a role, and but we all helped each other out.
And what were some of your skills that you took from the larger brewing companies that you found really valuable to a smaller company like Oakshire?
That's a good question. My experience working with distributors, especially larger distributors, my time and experience having worked for one and then managing them with the bigger breweries, without saying names, we made some decisions that were right for the business. Having 9 distributors in one state, all ordering off an a la carte menu of, we want to carry these brands, to consolidating to one with 5 warehouses for efficiencies. And really, what the reflection of the brands in the market were the same throughout the state. And business planning, bringing annual business planning and just metrics, and ability and relationships with major retailers as well.
And are those some of the reasons they brought you on board to start with?
I think so. That was a nice guy. Like I said, we met for 6 weeks and really got to know each other, even before a conversation about an opportunity was even on the table.
And you weren't at Oakshire a terribly long time, and a lot of that time was essentially half through the pandemic. So you're dealing with lots of unique obstacles. But looking at your time at Oakshire, what are some of the things that you're proud of, or what are some of the changes you made that were beneficial to the brewery?
Our managing of our distributors and our retail customers, just having a cadence of annual business planning, really contributing the knowledge of my time in big beer, but also appreciating what I didn't or understand about small business. I learned a lot from the team at Oakshire, but that last year was hard work, but it was a lot of fun. It really brought us close together and close with our distributors.
And one adjustment Oakshire made over the past year or so, they switched their core line from 12-ounce to 16-ounce cans. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. That was a quick, I don't want to say pivot. That was a quick change. And we, as a team and through our distributors, made that change very quick. The aluminum shortage, it was real. Oakshire had orders in place, and phone call came, sorry, we don't think we can get you cans. And worked with our agency to turn around labels and secured 16-ounce cans, entered the new item forms to switch out the distribution and the chains, walked through the rationale of the distributors, got the pricing, and it was a seamless transition. It didn't grab hold, and we had a lot of points of distribution to make up. But overall, it was a great, easy transition that I'm pretty proud of the whole team.
That's amazing. How quickly in the pandemic did you act and kind of make that pivot?
Timing was about October, maybe August, when we saw the can shortage. I mean, forgive me on the exact time, but it was by January 1st, we were going to have our whole core in 16-ounce cans.
That's quick.
It was quick, and it was done in stages. As one brand's 12-ounce label ran out, then the 16-ounce came in, and our retailers were very, very understanding and appreciative, because they felt it in other departments, that there were times that breweries had to put another style over another label. Retailers were really understanding, and it was seamless, but it happened, and it was a team effort.
No, thanks for sharing that. Now, you were at Oakshire about 3 years or so.
Yes.
What made you consider moving on? I mean, you had spent your almost entire career at that point in the beer world. Was it the pandemic, where you were just looking for some sort of new challenge? What influenced your decision, George, to move on to a company like PakTech?
Well, that's a good question. Through my career, I've had people say, "Man, you've worked for so many different companies. You're jumping ship. And I don't like the term jumping ship. It's just opportunities just came my way that I was foolish not to entertain. The PakTech opportunity kind of came that way the same way. It was a connection through LinkedIn, and it's like, well, this looks like a great opportunity. I'm not too familiar with the company. I was just at that point at 3 years of my commitment to Oakshire, but also in my gut, and I started to feel there's a change in the way distribution is going in the industry. Whether it's direct to consumer or own premise, distributors share of mind. It just felt like an opportunity that I needed to look into and see what the last 15 years or whatever of my career left. And then just learning that, just like Oakshire, PakTech is a family-owned, Eugene-based company with great standards. It's a family culture, and it has the same vibe. It's just not the same industry. It's supplying the handles to the industry versus supplying the beer to the retailers.
But I bet it does rely heavily on the relationships which you've built throughout your career. I mean, Obviously, as a partner in the craft beer industry, relationships are hugely valuable. Have you seen the value in relationships firsthand since you've joined PakTech?
As I'm building relationships, and taking on accounts and fielding inquiries, there's a few breweries that I've worked with already in my short time here that it's like, oh, this guy knows how to talk beer. He knows how many cans I might need for a 500 barrel batch.
So, no, that's absolutely valuable. I mean, the more you know, the more you can help your partners.
Yeah,
the breweries being the partners we mentioned in this case.
Yeah, it's definitely adding some great conversation. And sometimes I get down the rabbit hole because I'll Google the brewery first. I'm like, ooh, what's this style?
Well, I think the more you know, the better it is for everyone involved. Sure. It makes the relationship run much smoother. Now, I want to look back on your career and what motivated you to be as successful as you are. I mean, obviously, you're passionate about getting to know people and just helping people in general. And you seem to enjoy everything we talk about. And one thing you mentioned in an email to me was, I think you've been all over the world. You've been motivated to get rewarded with like certain trips to unique locations, whether it's going to the opening of a certain stadium or, let's say a beach vacation. What motivated you to be the best employee you could be over your career?
Teamwork. I love working as a team. It's never been about me. I mean, some of the fun things I've done were great, but it's really just I love to see whether it was my team at Oakshire or my team at Pabst or the teams I've managed. I just love to see success and coaching, seeing people, take what I've learned and share it with them. And if it works for them, but I just love people. I guess that's the bottom line. I just love the process of selling and having a conversation with folks over a beer and having some smiles.
No, I love that response because I wasn't quite sure what I would get when I had asked. I didn't know if you'd kind of go into the unique incentives you received working from some of the larger companies, but just the mere fact that you love seeing other people succeed is great. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And I've just truly seeing, working with our distributors and seeing their sales reps succeed and get excited about selling our brands at the time and, just being there. I mean, it's hard to be a distributor rep right now. And like I said, the brewery reps are there to help you succeed. And that's what I enjoy doing.
Now, when I first got on the call with you today, I was looking in your background, I should say. It's a real background, not some sort of Zoom, green screen. And it is one of the coolest I've possibly seen. From a distance, I can tell it has some sort of relation to PBR. But
yes,
for everyone listening who cannot see it as well as I can, describe what is behind me, because it's an absolutely gorgeous piece of art.
That is the Legend of the Pabst Loch Ness Monster. It's a piece that was done by a artist, Lauren Shaw, who submitted this piece for the West Coast PBR art show or art contest. And the art contest was 3 entries go in, and the winning piece becomes the marketing piece for summer. So pretty much your art piece is selected to be on the 12-ounce, 16-ounce, and 12-pack box. He created this piece, and he won the tap handle piece, the Octo Pabst. Have you ever seen an Octo Pabst tap handle? This is the artist. Long story short, he created this piece and left it with me, and I'm finally excited that I get to hang it somewhere.
It's a beautiful piece of art that you have on your wall. Have you been able to collect any other unique pieces of memorabilia over the years?
I've got quite a collection that I'm hoping my fiance will let me hang in the shop because it's time to break it out.
What are some of your most beloved possessions with regard to what you've collected?
Some classic Coors neons. There's some other pieces in my office that an artists have done that they're pretty sweet. But if it's got a beer label on it, I most likely just enjoy it. Just the old days of just true classic neons are pretty cool.
Were you always a collector, or you became a collector just based off of where you were working at the time?
I didn't realize I was a collector until my grandpa owned a couple owned two bars in Long Beach growing up. They're called George's Happy Hour. And I didn't realize it as, I was growing up and moved out, that my parents had saved a lot of the signs from his bar. So, I guess it's kind of been in the family.
So do you have those George's Happy Hour signs displayed anywhere in your home?
I don't have them in my possession yet. I have 8 brothers and sisters, so
But I would imagine out of your 8 brothers and sisters, I would hope you're the only George. Is that a fair assumption to make?
I'm the only George. It's just myself and my uncle.
So someday, hopefully, you can proudly display those. But
yes.
Speaking of, being proud, I mean, you've mentioned just watching the success of your teams, no matter where you've worked. Looking back when you're a little over 25 years, what are some of your proudest moments besides, those you've shared with others? Are there any specific accomplishments that you look back on and you were just thankful to be a part of that, or just you felt good about hitting a certain goal?
No, most recently, I would say it was that distributor transition that we accomplished at Oakshire. That was kind of one of those moments where it was like all the years of experience of working with breweries and then working with the team at Oakshire to accomplish something with a past relationship that I had at another distributor. That was pretty exciting. But I'd say one of my fondest memories was actually receiving the Market Manager of the Year award from Pete Coors. That one still, and then hanging out with him at the Pendleton Roundup 10 years ago.
What is the Pendleton Roundup?
Pendleton Roundup? Oh, you better Google it.
I'm in Virginia. You can tell me right now, George. You can let everybody know.
It's the largest ongoing rodeo in the West Coast in September.
And so you went to that rodeo with Pete Coors?
It was in my market, in the Oregon market. So he came out for the 100-year anniversary. And it's definitely the Coors and rodeo are synonymous together. So it was a great time.
So I think you had mentioned off air that he got some sort of message on his BlackBerry. It's just kind of funny to say the word BlackBerry because it's not a term you necessarily think about anymore, or like a CD perhaps. Are you able to mention what that was like?
I'll just say that the Lumitech aluminum pint that was released about that time 10 years ago, it went out of market just as quick as it went on for about a year. I'll just leave it at that.
Then you went back to enjoying the rodeo, I would imagine.
Yeah, but the message in the BlackBerry was that was a moment.
That's hilarious. I haven't been to a rodeo in a while, and hopefully, as the world starts to get more normal, we get a little more human interaction. We get back to, going to events like this, seeing other people we love and enjoy hanging out with in the industry. But looking ahead, what are your goals? I mean, you've said it earlier. You've been with quite a few companies. Do you envision your relationship with PakTech something that's going to be for quite some time, or on a personal level, do you have any goals to start anything of your own?
We've talked about that this weekend. How many times I've been asked in my career, when are you going to open a bar? When are you going to open a distributor?
George's Happy Hour. You already got the signage.
I'm really excited to really entrench and get up to speed here at PakTech. I'm going to be responsible for the lower Southeast market states, and bigger, some key accounts such as Hershey's and Clorox, and really just getting back on the road and through relationship building, succeeding in this new industry that I've joined.
No, that's very interesting. I'm excited for you. And you mentioned Hershey's and other companies like Clorox. Everyone in the beer industry obviously knows PakTech for the holders that we get all the cans we love in. But, what are some of the innovations that PakTech has going on you're excited about?
Which I had brought a couple in at the table. We're working. We just released this week. We'll be sending out an announcement. We're going to do keg caps now. So 100% recyclable keg caps, keg covers, and multi covers. We're dabbing into the cannabis industry for childproof protection. I think I've sent you some of those, didn't I, Andrew?
You have. I let my son try to play with them before, so they're childproof for anyone watching.
So we're looking in that space, but obviously the multi-pack space for consumer goods products is our business as well. So really the sustainability is the biggest part of the message. Is that yes, we make handles, but there's the sustainability and just the innovations, and they keep coming. I'm in awe every time I walk out into the manufacturing room. I had no idea that robots make these. It's pretty cool.
So it sounds like working at PakTech is a unique combination of your years working in the larger brewery with working at a small place like Oakshire.
Yes. Yeah.
What are some of the similarities you see from the beer world to PakTech? I know there's a lot of overlap because there is the relationship with the beer industry, but what are some of the culture similarities you've experienced that are very similar?
I would say specifically it's just it's a family-owned company. It's a really tight-knit group of great people that enjoy working together, sharing ideas. At the end of the day, it's customer service, taking care of the customer first and foremost, and that's the bread and butter of selling anything, right?
It comes back to relationships once
Yep.
again. Now, as a beer guy yourself, you're not 100% in beer anymore. What percentage of your time actually is still in beer? If you had to throw out an arbitrary number.
I would say about right now, as I'm getting up to speed, 50%. Yeah, working with breweries.
That's not too shabby at all. So I'm sure all of your relationships, as we mentioned, are still very, very valuable. And in your mindset, I absolutely love the teamwork, the relationships. I mean, you downplay, I think, all your expertise you've gained over the years.
Probably so.
So modest of you. Well, George, it's been fun hanging out this past hour. I mean, you've had so many unique experiences, and I want to make you think about one more. If you had to just look back one more time, what's an experience that you have had in craft beer or beyond that really shaped who you are as a person today?
Oh,
whether it's someone you met, an event you were involved in.
Yeah, I'll just have to say the mentor to this day that was my first boss in the industry, and that's Mike Specht. He's a legend. He's a legend in the industry.
And what did he teach you that you hold to your heart to this day? Are there any key points that you've kind of held on to?
Just be open, be honest, be upfront, take care of the customer.
No, I absolutely love it. George, I really appreciate you hanging out today. I'm looking forward to that first beer when we eventually get to have that, whether it's a smoothie sour or we go with one of your standby favorites while you're cutting the grass. But thanks for sharing your hour with me, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, well, hopefully I'll see you at CBC in Denver.
See you in September.
Oh, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.